people with ADHD are probably more likely to struggle in normal jobs being like employed jobs, because our brains have just got so many ideas, and fundamentally we are interest-led. So rather than importance-led, we're motivated by what we're interested in, what we're inspired by, authenticity, ideas. We are non-linear thinkers. So like when I started my law job, I was like, I'm going to start up a Twitter account and a podcast and this and that. My manager started and was like, what are you doing? She's like, you're a legal policy advisor. I was like, yeah, and we can have a podcast for it. And she was like, no, you can't.
No Bullshit Talks is a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. There's too much bullshit out there, especially when it comes to business. This podcast aims to highlight what's true and what's not in the world of entrepreneurship, bringing you honest and raw conversations about the roller coaster that is entrepreneurship. Each week, my guest will be a high-performing entrepreneur sharing the ups and downs of their journey and helping you prepare for the road ahead, while providing you with actionable insights and absolute gems of knowledge. Stay tuned as I introduce this week's guest. Leanne Maskell is a former model who is now a certified ADHD coach, running her own company, working with the likes of Google and Disney. She's written 4 books, selling thousands of copies all over the world. Leanne is now dedicated to training other people to become ADHD coaches and bring awareness to neurodiversity issues. I present to you this week's guest, Leanne Maskell. Welcome, Leanne, to the No Bullshit Talks podcast today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. It's been exciting to chat to you about what we're going to talk about today, because I feel like it's a topic that, you know, means a lot to me, because I feel like I have a lot of friends as well who are going through some difficult times when it comes to ADHD. And I think it's a very talked about topic at the moment. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions or a lot of bullshit around it. So I would love for you to come on and just bust a lot of that bullshit. I think would be great. And just, you know, I'll just pick your brains about a few things, which would be amazing. But I would love for you to introduce yourself first to our guest.
Hello, I'm Leanne Maskell. I'm terrible at introducing myself. I run ADHD Works, which is a company that does ADHD coaching. And we also train ADHD coaches. We also train companies like Google and Yahoo and Microsoft, and write books. And it's very multi-hyphenate, do everything, spin 5,000 million different plates. It's fun. It's never boring.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically the same as me, right? And I think that people always ask you that, and I hate introducing myself too. But do you know what? It's fun being a multi-hyphenate. I think there's a lot of stick about that too. And people tell me I do too many things or I need to slow down. And I'm like, okay, part of that's probably true. But, you know, also it's who I am, and I love doing so many things. And I'm actually genuinely really passionate about all those things. It's not like, exactly. It's not like you're doing it and then you're doing one that you don't really like. You're like, oh, but it's, you know, that's who you are. And I think it's great. And so exactly all of those sort of things you've done. So I think I really want to talk to you about founders and ADHD, because I obviously work with a lot of founders, a lot of other entrepreneurs, and I just think that there's a lot of entrepreneurs. I do think there's a trend between entrepreneurship and ADHD. I think it makes sense, you know, the way, like, you know, an ADHD brain works. It's like so many ideas, all these things. It's natural that they've gone into entrepreneurship. So I think that also there's a lot of entrepreneurs who probably don't know they have ADHD, but I'd love to talk about that. And, you know, what is it with founders that you've seen that, you know, why do so many have ADHD, and like, and how can founders who are already super busy doing a million different things cope with running a business while they have ADHD?
Good question. I don't know. You just try to survive, or just trying to get from one day to the next. But I think, well, there's loads of research out there linked with entrepreneurs and ADHD. Apparently, you're 300 times more likely to set up a business if you've got ADHD.
300?
Yep.
Okay.
It's either times or percent, 300 something.
Okay.
But that is very different to like actually keeping the business and running it. And it's really funny because we are very good at like the new novel, having new ideas, like got every day it's like, oh, I'm going to start an Uber for women, or I'm going to make this umbrella that goes across your whole body or whatever. It's a lovely idea. And then because we don't have the concept of like planning and time and thinking ahead and like all the boring bits, we just think about the fun bits. And then before you know it, we've got, I saw a great quote which said, not every idea needs an Instagram handle. We've already got the domain name, we've logo, we're like, oh, yay, Uber for women. And I was like, oh, I've got to actually set this up, and it was quite boring.
Yeah, I bought a new domain today.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah, oh goodness. Oh yeah, the amount of people that I work with that just own like millions of domain names, and I'm like, stop, cancel all your subscribe. Let's go through them all. So there's that. And then I think there's also the fact that like people with ADHD are probably more likely to struggle in normal jobs being like employed jobs, because our brains have just got so many ideas, and fundamentally we are interest led. So rather than importance led, we're motivated by what we're interested in, what we're inspired by, authenticity, ideas. We are non-linear thinkers. So like when I started my law job, I was like, I'm going to start up a Twitter account and a podcast and this and that. My manager started and was like, what are you doing? She's like, you're a legal policy advisor. I was like, yeah, and we can have a podcast for it. And she was like, no, you can't. And I was like, why not? This person. So it's like, when you've got all of these ideas and then trying to fit into a organization where it's like, no, this is your segment and these are other people's roles. And actually, I was just coaching someone this morning and I said, your normal is your business is like 250%, but like they don't realize that. Yeah. Like, you know, you're just running at such a high speed and have so many ideas and you're doing so much all the time, but like other people aren't actually doing that much. It's just that just feels normal for us. Yeah. So I think that kind of brain really lends itself to being an entrepreneur which is great, because on the one hand, there's like having no boundaries, like anything is possible. Why not? Why can't you just write a book? Why not just write a book? Got 4 books now. You just do it. Like after I talked to you last time, we had a chat. You said like, you know, what advice would you give to founders? And then I was like, oh, it's a good chat. I'm going to write a book. And I wrote for 3 weeks nonstop.
I didn't believe that. When you told me that, I was like, that's amazing. But it's also exactly what I want to help people do, right? Is like inspire them to do something, just ask the right questions, have really interesting conversations with people. But that's amazing that you just went, okay, 3 weeks, book, done. Like that. Just
written. Well, that's the big point. 3 weeks, book, done. No, we had 3 weeks where I did nothing else except write that book constantly. Dreamed about it. I was like so happy and inspired, and was like, yeah, I finally got my like inspiration back to write a book. Woo! Can you share helpful advice? And then I got to 75%, and then I just could not look at it. I woke up one day and I was like, I'm bored of that. I don't want to look at it anymore. Couldn't open it again. Still haven't opened it again. And so that is like, that's the thing. Well, actually, and then I was like, maybe I could turn it into a course. And then I was like, and then I've made a whole course for it. And then I was like, would anyone actually do this course? Is that actually a good idea? I've got all of these other things to do, and now it's on the shelf of half-written or 3/4 written books. So I think that is a good analogy for like ADHD entrepreneurs. We're very much more likely to start all this stuff because we're like, yeah, woohoo, why not? And then when we lose the interest because it becomes normal, then it's really, really hard to sustain it. So I think to your second question of like, how do you survive in a business when you have ADHD? It's being aware of that and knowing that will go, and then having boundaries and measures in place for yourself, like knowing that the high is going to fall off.
How do you do it then? Because I feel like I'm just thinking about, I had someone once tell me, describe me, I didn't know this, obviously they had it behind my back, describe me as the girl who never finishes anything. Like that's what I was described as. And it's just, you just give me bad memories of this now. But it's like, okay, so even if you're aware that this is what you're like, self-awareness is the first step and the most major step for a lot of things. But even once you're aware of it, how on earth do you get to like, because you've got 25% of this probably amazing book left to do. How do you complete it? Like, what do you do?
Well, nothing is ever finished, right? Like, that's what my response would be to them. Like, and so I think it's like for me, coaching. So I wrote a book called ADHD and A to Z a few years ago that did very well. I guess I was just early on the trend. Whatever. Since then, there's a lot more people. But I wrote it after I was diagnosed, exactly the same, 75%. Wrote it at work, actually. Then one day I just couldn't look at it anymore. Didn't touch it again for 8 months. And then I found out about Access to Work and that they could pay for ADHD coaching, which I was like, what? which I'd not even thought about ADHD for 8 months. I was just like busy doing other things. Found out about this. I was like, oh my God, had coaching. And again, I would say I'm definitely also autistic, and like took it very literally in that first coaching session, because the coach said, she said, is there anything that you want me to help you stay accountable to finishing for next time? And I was like, oh, I need to say something. So I was like, and then I was like, I've got half a book I could finish. And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah, it's about ADHD, and that's the people pleasing. And then she was like, wow, that's amazing. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I was like, I'll finish it. And then in that week, I finished it.
Oh, wow.
But then I was like, oh God, now I have to like do, because then she was like, amazing. And she was like, what's the next stage? And I was like, well, I actually don't, like, I didn't write that book to publish it. I just wrote it kind of out of boredom and like wanting to learn about myself. So, but again, then that was the kind of problem with her, because she was like, cool, now what? And then I was like, okay, I guess I could publish it on Amazon. And I just self-published it. But then at first I really regretted it, because I was like, I didn't even want to publish it. And I misspelled the title as ADHD, which I only realized after putting it right, which is why I say nothing is ever finished. And then like another 8 months later, a publisher bought it from me, and like now it's still out there doing what it's doing. But
that's incredible. And that's incredible for so many. I'm just like mesmerized by all those things there. Like, first of all, I don't know anyone who's actually had a book published, as in a self-published book bought. So that's amazing achievement, because publishers usually don't do that. So it must have been doing so well. So, and I obviously have seen it everywhere. Like, it's been, and it looks great as well. So I think it's just a really fantastic thing. But also just like the accountability things. I want to again touch on that, because I think, what I want to get out is to everyone out there with ADHD, or people who are going through something they think is ADHD and they're not sure about. And we're going to talk about all this stuff, but I really want to delve into the little things, because I think so many people offer this big generic advice, but they don't really get into actionable things. Yeah. And it's like, okay, great. That sounds great. Exactly. But,
make money.
So I'm like, right, okay. So you finished it in a week. Like, what was it what actually was it? Like, was it the accountability?
Yes, it was that. That was it. I was like, oh my God, this one has told me that she's going to read my book, and I've told her I'm going to finish it in a week, and now I must finish it in a week.
Okay, so it is that. And I think, because I love accountability partners, and I think it's great.
I was so stressed. That's why coaching is so effective for people with ADHD, because it's like people pleasing to yourself for your own benefit.
Yeah.
So it's really, really effective for us, because it's like, there's a 30% developmental delay in executive functioning skills of ADHD, and particularly self-awareness. So that self-awareness part is why we struggle to like do what we know. So if you've got someone that can like be your body double, like your coach or God, I had this morning like the biggest experience. Like, I've had a really bad burnout week, really, really bad. Like yesterday I had a huge kind of meltdown. And this morning I went to a personal trainer really randomly. They'd like emailed me and offered me a free thing, and then I went and was like, I don't exercise, I don't leave the house at all, like I don't do anything. And I was like, this is really gonna be really good though. I was like, this is like a coach for your body. And he was like, yeah it is. And I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I need, because I really, really struggled to make myself even leave the house, but exercise, get a routine. And I was like, oh, this guy can get me to come to the gym and like even just leave the house. So I think it's recognizing that like you need other people and other things. And that's why with BS, like you mentioned, you have loads of journals. It's like you can buy all the journals and try all of the routines, habits in the world and be like, why isn't this working? But you just have to take it like little bit by bit, like do the book, whatever, one goal done, like marathons into sprints. And treat it like little hills rather than like huge mountains and beating yourself up for never being able to finish anything. And then like scrolling on Instagram being like, why can everyone else do this thing but not me? But it's just find someone and then someone that really gets your brain. This I think is really important. And
then that's it, because I think that not everyone with ADHD is the same, and they have varying different degrees of ADHD, and like you said, elements of autism plays into it, and that really changes the brain. I think people don't get it, and you see people getting frustrated with other people, and then I think that makes it worse, and it's like that could actually cause so many more problems. So I think, so I feel like getting the right person is so important. I'd love to talk about that as well, because you said access to work, and I think that so many people don't know about it, and I think those who do know about it now are still there's a massive waiting list with everything in the UK, right? So it's like, I think you have to wait months and months and months for it. But can we explain just what access to work is? Because you said it massively helped you. And obviously, I know it's changed a lot of people's lives. It's incredible actually what they're offering. So I'd love to just like, can you explain a little bit about access to work and how it all works and how people can get a hold of it?
Yeah, and I have a whole chapter in my book, ADHD Works at Work.
And of course.
I've got a free course in it. Well, Access to Work is a government, UK government scheme from the DWP, which is very ironic because they talk a lot about disability and pensions and benefits, and this isn't a benefit, it's a grant, so it's not like a disability benefit, and anyone with any health condition can get up to £69,000 a year per person of funded support to help them at work. And the whole point is, which I don't know how good this is, but the whole point is to help someone stay in work, because I think it's more expensive for people to leave the workforce because they're not able to stay in it because of a health condition, and then to retrain them and get them back into it. But the whole point is that it keeps you in your work. And you mentioned the wait list. The wait list now is 6 to 7 months, quite long. The application is not very ADHD friendly. That's why you might want to go do like step-by-step course. Free course, because it is incredibly, incredibly helpful. It's one of these like very frustrating loopholes, basically. Like if you can like withstand the very, very painful like application, I basically fight with Access to Work every single day because we have a lot of coaching clients that get funding from them. We have a lot of employers that we're helping to navigate through the process, and the process doesn't always work. Like if we want to talk to Access to Work, we have to call them up, and it takes like an hour on hold on the phone. They'll only talk to you about like one person's case at a time. That's
Thank God.
Yeah. And it's a very stressful life that I live. Yeah, but I know all the guidance like off by heart. So but it's great. It can be really great. Like, it helps me with, it has a, what was it called? Virtual assistant, like someone that helps me with all my admin. I wouldn't be here without them. Honestly, I wouldn't do anything that I do, and especially the coaching. Like, but it can pay for all kinds of things like laptops. It won't pay for reasonable adjustments, which are like what an employer should pay for. But it can pay for like people to have a support additional to that. So anything like chronic fatigue coaching, or like any kind of specialist equipment that might be useful or helpful. We can pay for travel. So it's a super, super, super helpful scheme. The only problem with it is that it is highly inaccessible. And I'm sorry, I should have said, if you are, and any founder should know this, if you are due to start work in the next 4 weeks, I believe, or to become self-employed in the next like 4 weeks, then your application will be fast-tracked. And say like, we've hired 2 employees at ADHD Works in the last couple of months, and both of these people got their application within a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Shortcuts.
That's really crazy. So is that because they want to make sure they're prepared for the job and that it doesn't fall through and doesn't...
I don't know. I guess.
Because like you said, it's more expensive to lose.
Like, you have to know about that. Yeah. Obviously, I know about it. So as soon as I had them, I was like, apply for Access to Work. But for most people, first of all, their employers don't know. Second of all, even if their employers do find out, then they're like, what is it? And again, it's very inaccessible. So it's like quite confusing for them to know how to like engage that process. And then even if like they do apply for it and they get that funding, then there's a huge mix up on education for the employers of knowing like, is this a reasonable adjustment? Do we need to do anything else for them? Especially if there's a delay, which often happens, which is why I wrote about in the book, because then they can get a bit mixed up because someone just has to tell their employer about it when they apply. Right. So it's super, super helpful, but like, and I think most people probably in reality wouldn't tell their employer, like, especially if they've just got a new job, to be like, I'm going to apply for Access to Work.
Yeah,
I don't know what they're going to tell you, because you obviously have to tell them about how you struggle at work. So it's quite a vulnerable thing to do.
But I don't think a lot of people feel comfortable doing that and admitting things, which is tricky. But I'd like to focus on the founders at the moment, just because that's the most people who watch this podcast. But I think that the question is like, I think it's so difficult with all that sort of stuff. You're a little bit skeptical about whether the government actually going to follow through. And like you said, there's a 6-7 month waiting list. Like, how often do you see people get rejected as well? And like, what are the criteria? Because you said 69,000 is a lot of money. But even if you just got 20,000. That's a lot of money that would help massively.
Exactly.
Anything. So like, you know, like that's going to be life-changing to a lot of people. I know that it's not a life-changing amount in terms of you're going to go out buy yachts and jets and stuff, but it is a life-changing amount for someone with ADHD who's stressing as a founder, who can't do all these a million different things and would like to have a VA, an ADHD coach who just kind of help manage their brain a bit more and understand themselves a bit more. It would be life-changing, literally.
It is life-changing.
But how, like, do people get rejected? I'm guessing they do. And like, under what grounds?
No.
How they don't?
So they don't get rejected. They don't get rejected, and they don't need a formal diagnosis.
Interesting.
Super blessed. You don't need a formal diagnosis of anything to apply, which is great because not to get too technical, as in law, basically it's a legal test. It's not a medical test. They're not giving you specialized support, but as I say, very inaccessible persons in general, very admin heavy, very like asking questions that are not really very like neurodivergent friendly. Like, how many hours a week do you need the support? And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah. How do you know the answer to
what
that?
support? Yeah, I don't know. What support is available? Like
100 hours a week?
Yeah. I thought that I work 100 hours a week, and I do. I genuinely work 100 hours a week. Like, I work from 6 a.m. until midnight every day. Like, I don't have any...
Even like, when you're like sleeping, your brain's...
Yeah, exactly. Like, I work non-stop. So, yeah, and... but what does happen very often is that you apply, and then it is literally just the luck of the draw of who you get as a caseworker. So they'll open your case, and then they will usually do like an independent assessment for you. So they'll refer you to like a third-party person, which actually the majority are pretty nice. That person, again, it's just the luck of the draw. If you get a nice person, they might help you. So, for example, if you apply and you want coaching, I'll tell you my experience. The first time I applied was basically after being told about it by a coach that I talked to completely by chance. And I was like, I need her help. And they did this whole process. The assessor talked to me, and I was like, I would like coaching with this woman. She understood my brain perfectly. She was going to change my life. And he was like, yeah, well, it's like cost effectiveness. And then he basically awarded, after all this months of waiting and challenge and having to talk to my employer about it, and then they awarded me like £750 for coaching with a provider that like wasn't specific even to ADHD. And I was so angry. I was like, after all of that, basically, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, and then I said, what? Like, I was like, if you're making me go through all of this process, why can't I just get the support for like this person? I would rather use that money for her. And the thing is, you actually can use the funding with the supplier of your choice. So they don't have to, if they give you £750 and you want to use that with a different person, that's up to you. But I appealed it. I applied for like a reconsideration, which I didn't think would work. But I was so angry and so emotional and so like, this could be the light. And I was like, also, if I get this coaching with these people that are not specialists to ADHD, it's not going to be helpful. My employer's going to be really angry because they're going to have higher expectations, blah. And I think they were like, just give it a shot. And then they gave me the funding for my coach, and I was right, because like it wouldn't be a useful use of taxpayer money to have given me that funding for coaching that wasn't specialized for my needs. But the coaching that I had then, it did genuinely enable me to stay in my job. I was working on like all of the COVID legislation at the time, mental health and immigration. Brexit was very stressful, but I stayed in it.
Fun.
I did it. I did stuff for the country. I returned the favor, and now obviously hopefully helping a bit with the ADHD like crisis that the country is in. But yeah, it is honestly life-changing. Without that coaching, I would have just burnt out and crashed out. I was living over the road from my job in an attempt to not quit. And then I was like, no one made me. I was just so determined not to quit that I was like, I'm going to live on Chancery Lane.
Barrier from like, oh my God, I get it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And like, that's not actually that effective of a long-term strategy. So, and then that office burnt down anyway. So,
Oh my God.
yeah, exactly. Not my fault. And then COVID hit. So like, yeah, it was intense times. Sorry, that was a huge tangent for your questions.
No, that was great. You just mentioned the ADHD crisis that our country's having. So I want to touch on that because there's so much in the news, and I don't know what's real and what's not. But, you know, I know that so many people I know who have relied on ADHD meds all their life are now going oh my God, like, what do I do? Because there's this massive shortage and they just feel like they can't function. They are, you know, stripped of like everything they know about themselves. And some people are turning to recreational drugs now as a result, just to compensate for what it is. And also just, again, like, you know, with the, even the diagnosis, like people who sort of have been going most of their life, having all these symptoms and they don't know who they are, and they suddenly realize, actually, I might have ADHD. They're having to wait, like, what, it's now 2 years or something for an official diagnosis?
7 years.
7 years?
10 years, yeah.
What? I don't understand how that began. I don't understand how it's such a delay, but why?
Yeah, that's why I wrote that book, ADHD Made Sad, because there's a whole long story. But when I was diagnosed, so to give you the context, I was diagnosed and I didn't think I had ADHD. Like, I just knew that I didn't fit into like society. After studying law, graduating, went over to Australia, kept starting jobs, quitting them. Didn't try living over the ridge from them. No, bad maybe I should have. And then I basically became really suicidal all the time. But then I would wake up feeling fine. I was like, no, we're not going to tell anyone about that. But then I was like completely all the time being like, I'm completely insane, because how can I feel that bad and then wake up feeling fine? Started Googling it, being like, I've got every single one of these conditions, bipolar, borderline personality. And I was like, how can someone have all of the conditions? And I was terrified. I remember how absolutely terrified I was to go to a doctor. And I kind of mentioned it to a GP once or twice, and they were just like, oh, you're fine. They're like, you've got a law degree. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, they said I'm fine. And then I'd feel exactly the same the night. But then it basically eventually I became like very, very bad and decided like to end my life. Fortunately, I got ADHD, so I'm still here. Like, we didn't follow through. Terrible joke. Never works.
Horrible to laugh at.
I always tell that joke when I do talks in companies, and they're like, "What did she just say?" And then and then I follow it up with, "No one ever laughs at this joke," and I think it's because I only did half stand-up comedy course. Anyway, but no, it's luckily at that point when it got like really, really serious, I decided to go to a psychiatrist, because I was like, do you know what, you might as well like go to. I was literally ready to be like taken to hospital. I was like, I'm ready for the hospital time. Because I never talked to anyone about what was going on in my head like properly. So I just decided to do it. It costed me £1,000, and I didn't even have a GP like in England. And they said, yeah, you have got ADHD. I was like, no, I've got a real problem. I was like, I've got one of these problems. And he was like, no, you don't. He was like, you've got really bad ADHD. I was like, well, fine, then actually give me drugs. I was like, that's actually not that bad. I'm not going to hospital now. I was like, yay. And he was like, no, I'm not going to give you drugs like straight away. He was like, you have to come back. We have forms. It's very painful part of this process. That everything to do with ADHD seems to be an incredibly un-ADHD friendly bureaucratic process. He was like, we're going to give you these forms to get your friends and family to fill in and look at your school reports. And I was like, first of all, I have no friends and family because I've had fights with all from this, and also I have no idea what my school reports are. So it was, and I had a holiday the next day for 2 weeks to Bali. So he said, fine, come back after your holiday. And I was like, went to Bali, and then like met a stranger on the beach and moved in with him, and did a partner visa. And then a year later came back and I was like, I believe you. ADHD is real. Okay. Yes, I believe in ADHD now. So and then I like finished off that diagnosis, went on the medication, and it was life-changing. Already because he mentioned ADHD to me, I kind of looked into it a bit more. And it was only when I learned about the emotional dysregulation part, which is commonly associated with this thing called rejection sensitive dysphoria, which is basically extreme emotional pain at real or perceived rejection that can lead to like very, very strong emotional mood swings, including feeling suicidal, which is like, all right then, I accept. And then it's like once I got that diagnosis, my life completely changed because of the medication. Although, again, like it's a long story, but that medication made me really, really unwell initially, because I had to pay £300 for it every month, and I had no money. So, and being diagnosed didn't make things better overnight either. It just made me more like, yay, woohoo! Now I know this about myself. Like, I'm going to make all of these impulsive decisions, and I now know my life. And then being like, actually, nothing has changed. And to even talk to the psychiatrist cost me hundreds of pounds. So it was like really, really stressful time. And the medication made me really unwell. It almost killed me, ironically. So eventually I went off it completely, and I said, look, I'm just going to go for the NHS, because my doctor had told me that I couldn't do that. The psychiatrist, he was like, no, they'll make you go for the like year-long waiting lists. I said, I was like, I literally cannot afford the subscription. And he wrote me a letter, and then my GP, who I signed up to, told me that they could accept that. And I was like, oh. So if I hadn't done that and gone for all of that, I would have never known that I could have got this on the NHS. But many people, it's really complex, which is why it's so simplified in the media, on social media, because it takes a long time to like explain these kind of issues and hear them, and to realize like it's different for everyone. Like some people, their GP won't recognize private prescriptions. Some people, their GP will. Some people, they usually have to go through like titration for a period of months before they can. It's just a complete, like some diagnoses cost £3,000. Some of them take like, you know, like my process, like involving all these steps. Some of them take like half an hour. So actually my one on the NHS that followed up took like half an hour. So like it's a real minefield. But right now, so that happened to me 6 years ago. And then that's basically why I wrote this book, ADHD and A to Z, because my new GP said, okay, we can give you this medication. But they're like, if you want to change your medication to go higher, then you'll have to go for the NHS again in the future. And they said, and that'll take 7 years. Like, what? He was like, so I was like, if I had to wait 7 years, I would definitely be dead. I would not be here. And I couldn't believe that was the case. And there actually is a 5 times higher risk of suicide for people with ADHD than the general population. So it's a really, really, really serious issue. And then I think the medication shortage started a year ago. And just one day I went to get my medication, jumping through my various bureaucratic hoops each month. And they were just like, yeah, we don't have it. And they're like, it's just run out at the suppliers. I was like, where does that come from? And there's global shortages at the moment. I think it's due, I don't know, I honestly have got no idea. I think it's partly due to pharmaceutical reasons, supply, demand, but it has a really bad impact on people's lives. And I have experienced that both myself personally and professionally, in coaching all of the people that don't have the medication, becoming like suicidal, self-harming, losing jobs, having fights, like really, for myself as well, it caused absolute chaos, because you don't know when you're going to, right now, you're only prescribed 30 days at a time because it's a regulated and controlled drug. So even if you get that, then you don't know what's going to happen the next month. So it basically made me really unwell, as I was when I was paying £300 for it, because similarly back then, I didn't know if I would be able to afford it again. So it's bad. It's not good.
My God, there's so much. It is, but I'm just like thinking about so many different things right now. I'm like, oh my God. But it's, how, like, I just listened to it. I'm thinking, God, anyone with ADHD is just screwed. Like, because, and I'm just like, it's not to be put a negative spin on it, but I'm just like, how on earth do you like live with all this? Because it's like, you just said that the diagnosis changed your life. So I feel like there's a lot of people who want to get diagnosed because they want to understand themselves a bit more. And I think like when you officially get it, some people are fine with just, you know, knowing they kind of have it and then don't really necessarily officially need it. But I guess what the reasons for getting officially diagnosed is A, you can get a prescription to help you.
You would think.
Yes. Yeah, well, you should be able to get one. Legally, you can get one, I meant. And B, I guess, is just officially knowing that, right? So I guess my questions are, like, is it worth doing the private? Because they say, like, you know, the private one, you can get it done very, very quickly. Obviously pay for it, but what is that worth to you? What is that bit in your life worth to you? And like, you know, obviously ballpark, how much does it cost for, like I said, they're all range. I've seen different ones as well. Like, but like in terms of to get a diagnosis and to maintain a prescription, but can you even do that now privately with the shortage? That's a question as well.
Exactly.
So I'm just curious about like what are people's options now? Like when you're out there?
And I have an even more unhappy answer for you, because Actually, this is why I led a petition, and it got 11,000 signatures last year.
Wow.
So pre-diagnosis, like when you're going to go get an assessment, there are no kind of standard tests or like rules of what should happen. But you can only be diagnosed with ADHD by what they call a qualified person. And that usually means like a psychiatrist or a psychologist, maybe a nurse that's had specific training. Only a psychiatrist can give you medication. Yeah. So let's say you pay like £1,000 for an assessment and you think like, yeah, I'm going to get assessed, woohoo, ADHD, and whatever. I've scraped all this money together for my assessment, and then I'm finally going to get this medication, life-changing medication that's going to help me, which in itself doesn't help, because we say pills don't give skills. Like it can be hugely helpful, but by itself it still needs like adjusting. But if you don't realize this very big difference, and many people don't because like it's a whole industry, then you are diagnosed, and then that diagnosis is basically worthless. And because legally there's a whole issue around workplace, if I wanted a reasonable adjustment from my employer, ADHD could be considered a disability. In which way? For example, they might have to let me work at home if that would help me with my, obviously with me living over the road, that would obviously help me. It would help me if I lived further away from work, but it's different for everyone. That's a whole other so that doesn't require a formal diagnosis either, because the access to work, it's a legal test, it's not a medical test. But this is really, really confusing for employers. And then when it comes back to the whole assessment process, so I'd say probably ballpark is between £900 to £3,000 for an assessment. I was probably looking at £1,500. I would say that to just check your options. Actually, I can't recommend Dr. Becky Quick of Autism Girls more, because they do autism and ADHD assessments, but they've been so thorough, which I generally don't recommend any psychiatrists, because I don't know them, because my own experience is not great, and it was Harley Street, so it was not the best, and it was a particular person there. Yeah, so there's all different kinds, but I would say definitely make sure that go by recommendation, or ask some questions before paying for it. And I think be really clear about what the purpose is, because for example, if your purpose is just to know, and I can give you a really great example of me now with my autism assessment. So I've been working with autistic people and ADHD for years now, and I very much when I'm coaching autistic people, I'm that's just normal, and they're no, you're autistic, yes. I'm yeah, I'm not. And then I was oh, actually, the more that I learned about it, there's a 50 to 75% crossover of ADHD and autism. I was oh, this is actually, it's very, very relevant. Family members of mine have been diagnosed. And so I was yeah, definitely autism. But I was what's the point in getting an assessment? So I was very much in this camp for a long time, where I was there is literally no point in me getting told that I have something I already know that I have. And that's what I would say for most people out there is that assessment, yeah, it's very amazing and you're diagnosed, but nothing actually changes. And it's really anticlimactic, because I didn't know that I had ADHD, which is why it was so life-changing, and the medication was very life-changing. The diagnosis itself, I was yeah, whatever. I was give me a drug. I was I don't really care what this thing is. Just sort it out, because nothing else changes. It can be a really, really lonely, emotional, difficult process. And so many of us are now it all makes sense. It's not my fault. I've beat myself up for being lazy all my life, and nothing has actually changed. Yeah, that's true, but also it wasn't your fault before that diagnosis either. You were just doing the best that you could. So I'm making a new course called a neuroaffirmative certification program, because that's basically what I want to teach. You don't need that diagnosis to be able to give yourself that kindness and understanding, and the same to other people, because we all do think differently. Sorry, let me think back now. Yeah, so my autism assessment, I met someone that said that she had an autism assessment of £750, and I was oh, I'm going to do that. And I was like, well, I might as well just like do it then if it's cheap-ish. And I was like, it would be helpful to just know, especially because this year I've really, really struggled with the autism symptoms. And I've started dating someone that has ADHD, and our manifestations are very, very, very different. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm like very, very autistic, and it was really impacting my life. But again, I knew that like it wasn't going to change my life to just be told I'm autistic. But most recently, I was like, you know, I'm just going to do it. I signed up for this assessment. They booked me in straight away to like a 3-hour call, and then they sent me over some questions to answer, and the questions were just so bad. I was like filling them in, and they were questions like, do you have problems with your nerves? And I was like what? He's like, what kind of nerves? Like,
and also you don't know.
Well, yeah,
exactly. You
exactly.
don't even know.
I was like mental nerves, physical, and then like, do you take medication? And like, they just asked, do you take medication for your nerves? Like, just really, well, I guess, unautistic friendly questions. And then also a question for your partner, saying my boyfriend was doing it, and he was like, yeah, why are you doing this assessment? He was like, why are you skimping on something that's going to change your life so much? And then I was like, actually, right. And he was like, especially for you, like, you know, the ADHD is such a huge part of your life. He was like, why are you not doing this properly? I was like, actually, I guess you're right. So luckily, I cancelled it, managed to get a refund, and then went with Dr. Becky Quick of Autism Girls, who had seen her posting on LinkedIn, and the other person, Hattie Richards, and their posts were just really, really resonant with what I experienced so much. And I was like, oh, these people get it. I think with a lot of women, they are hesitant, similar to me, about going for any kind of assessment, because it's weirdly like an exam that you don't want to fail. Because if they tell me that I'm not autistic, then I'm going to be like, oh, I'm just not liked. So it's a weird, especially if you have grown to kind of identify with this, to then be told actually by someone else, like, you don't fit this criteria because it's based on little boys, basically, and it's really outdated, is really emotional and difficult. So, but I'm really, really, really glad that I'm doing it with them. And they had like a call with me initially, like a free half-an-hour call, going through like, why do I want an assessment? How is it going to change my life? And they kind of did a bit of pre-work to tell me if it was worth going ahead, which was really useful. And then she sent me all of so many forms again, but they were quite fun forms. But like, they literally sent me like 3 different forms in the post, forms by email, including ones for other people to fill out. And she sent me all these like extra quizzes about like masking and a couple of things called alexithymia and monotropism, which are like manifestations of autism. So the first one, alexithymia, is like difficulty in recognizing and feeling emotions, which I got 99% on. And monotropism, which is like very intense, just solo focus, which even doing these things made me be like, oh my God, I can see myself so much in this. So again, really long answer, but I think it's just worth thinking about what you're going to get from it, because I think it can be really, really validating. And unfortunately, we are in the world right now where like labels matter. If you have a child in school, they're going to need that formal assessment. And realistically, if you're going to go to your employer, you're going to want to have a formal assessment to be able to point to something if you get a bad response. But it's not perfect. It's got a long way to go. So hopefully things get a bit better. But
if you get the diagnosis, it doesn't make that much of a difference in some ways, because obviously, like you said, it's not your fault and it never was your fault. But I do feel like that's the internal kind of validation and you know, understanding. But I do believe that it provides external validation. And I think like, I feel like it, you know, for a lot of people, you know, they, like you said, people, maybe their parents or the family, friends, old like bosses or whatever, would consider them to be lazy or didn't understand them, or, you know, you're too manic, or like all these things that people get told, or all these different things. And actually, they can be like, well, there's a reason why I wasn't just being difficult, or I wasn't just, you know, trying to be disruptive. Like that is actually a condition that I've got and I can't help it. I think that would give a lot of peace to a lot of people, because I think that, like you said, the whole social rejection thing, it's really hard to take. And then you're sort of thinking, okay, well, this person doesn't like me because of this, and it's affecting me because of this and stuff like that. I feel like that's, you know, there must be something in it for that, no?
Yes. It can help with external validation and understanding, I think. And that's basically why I made this course, this neuroaffirmative course. Because as much as we would like to think that, and as much as when you get diagnosed with something like ADHD, you go on your own like very intense journey and your whole life has changed, your identity, for everyone else in your life, it depends on the people and their own experiences, opinions, prejudices. For me personally, like when I was diagnosed with ADHD, literally no one cared. Actually, just one of my family members said it wasn't real, and they were not going to change their mind. And everything else didn't really change anything. They were just like, oh, look, okay. And I think that's what is one of probably the most disappointing and most difficult parts about it, is you do think that you're like, oh my God, then I'm gonna have this reason, and like, but it's not what I always say, ADHD is not an excuse, but it's an explanation, and then you can understand your brain better. And that's why I think everyone, if we all treated each other like that, because some people are not diagnosed, like ADHD has only been diagnosable in adults in the UK since 2008. So many people are not diagnosed. They don't know that they're even neurodivergent. But if you can just appreciate that most people are just trying their best, they're not lazy, they don't want to get in trouble. Like these kids at school that are not going to school, they're not doing it because they just don't like going to school. They're doing it because there's obviously a reason that they're not going. And so instead of like finding their parents for it, the government should like understand what that reason is and try and make these environments a bit happier to be a part of. But it's a really difficult thing. And I think like for me, now I'm getting this autism assessment. It's really funny and sad because I've done all this work for ADHD for the last 6 years, and I'm like literally the walking ADHD person. And I've stamped on my forehead. I assumed that going through this autism thing now, like it's been saying I've really not talked to her very much, like publicly, because I felt a bit of impostery, even though like I feel very confident in it. But I told a friend of mine, like, oh, I'm actually getting an autism assessment, and she was like, you don't have autism.
Why do people always think that they know you better than you know yourself? Like, I just don't understand that.
She was like, loads of people like you. And I was like, oh. And I was like, this is the best thing. And she was like, I could get diagnosed with autism if I went for an assessment. And I was like, I know you could. Because you have a really interesting approach to social interactions there. Like, and she has got a lot of autistic traits herself, but she was like, why do you need a label? And I was like, I already have a label that's really helped me a lot. And I was so, it's so ironic because I really shut down emotionally and I just like stopped. I was just like, I actually don't even know what to say, because I was like, it's so ironic because she was just saying all of the like textbook things that I literally talk about every single day with ADHD. Like I hear this stuff every day from people of like bad reactions from like family, friends, all these people being like, you don't look like you've got ADHD. And she was just saying all this stuff to me. And I was like, you're like one of my best, and we're not friends now. We've not spoken since then. Because I was just like, oh my God. I was like, surely you must think that of me for the last 5 years then as well, because why would autism be any different from ADHD? Like, and I was like, for me, and I was saying like, look, it's just something that I think is going to help me with this understanding. I shouldn't have to like justify it or explain it to you. Like if your friend is seeking out help, you should just be happy for them and like listen to them. And I guess this was inspired me to make this course. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make a course about that. But it's really difficult because I think we've all got our own internal bias. And like that person, I'm sure that she didn't mean to upset me or offend me. It's just the inherent bias that she has got about autism, whatever it is. And so it's really hard to kind of distance yourself and not get really, really angry and really upset. And I often hear from people after being diagnosed, like they're like, I just want to educate the world. And the depressing thing is the world is not gonna listen. You can't make people care, and you can't make them see that about you. Like the only thing you can control is yourself. And so it's an annoying part of it, but I do feel like it's easier to just reach that level of self-acceptance for yourself, whether you have that diagnosis or not, and just being kinder to yourself. If you can't do something, it's not because you're not trying. It's because there's a good reason for why you can't do it, and maybe just go to sleep. Try again tomorrow.
I mean, I just feel like the self-validation is always going to be the most important. Like if you believe in yourself and you know who you really are, then that can conquer everything. But I do think it is difficult. And I think that, like you said, at the moment, right now, with all the shortage of medication, like people are a version of themselves that they don't know how to manage. And so I definitely want to kind of ask you a few questions about that, because, you know, the majority of people out there with ADHD are unmedicated now. And a lot of people who even have a prescription don't want to choose the meds because they're strong meds. Like the stuff that we have to take is strong. So it's like, it's scary because it can lead to addiction, it can lead to other side effects. And like, you know, lots of people who are kind of anti that sort of stuff won't take it anyway. What tips do you have for people who have got ADHD or think they've got ADHD, who are unmedicated? How can they kind of just, you know, get through their everyday and manage the symptoms?
That's what I should say. It can't lead to addiction. You feel that would be all of the myths of ADHD medication. It actually helps you. If you can regulate your brain, it helps you to stay off addictive substances. It's one of the weirdest unintentional parts about this, because I often hear from parents, they're really, really worried about their kids taking it because of addiction. It's addictive. Try to take it. I don't know how a medication that you can forget to take can be addictive. Like every day I'm like, have I taken the medication? I don't know. It just makes me feel normal. Like it's not addictive in the slightest for me. I'm just like feel calm. And I think that what it did for me before I was diagnosed and took this medication, I would get drunk like literally 3 or 4 times a week, like blackout drunk on purpose to just be hungover the next day so that I could feel calm, which is the weirdest thing to admit to. But when I took this medication, what was amazing is I just actually didn't even put myself in those positions anymore. I didn't force myself to go out clubbing with people I didn't like to get drunk so that I could be hungover the next day. I just stopped drinking, and it was a really, really amazing thing that happened. And that's what happened to me earlier this year when I wasn't taking it. Suddenly I was like really, really drunk. Then that's the impulsivity. Like I had like a glass of wine on like a Sunday lunch with a friend, and then we were gonna go watch the Taylor Swift like movie. Before I knew it, I was like 2 bottles of wine down, dancing at the front of the Taylor Swift cinema, pretending to be Taylor Swift. And then I was like, oh my God. And then by that night, I was like blacked out in bed and like covered in blood because I cut myself on a razor that was in my back, like when I was trying to find my phone. And like, I was like, I woke up in the morning and had the worst panic attack because I was like, oh my God, like, why? I've got a problem. But I didn't have a problem. It's just because that medication had helped me regulate for so long that not being on it was so jarring, and like I didn't know how to regulate myself anymore. So, but I think for people that are not on medication, and medication is very much a personal choice, I would completely understand the temptation not to take it, saying as like, who knows if you're going to get it next month? I don't know. And also it very much changes the way your brain works. Like, say, as an adult, if you don't know what that looks like, it's really, really scary. But that's kind of why I wrote that book, ADHD and ADHD, because that was what I thought when I heard about this waiting list. Because I was like, well, all of those people on that waiting list, there's stuff they can do in those 7 years they're going to be waiting for medication that it's not necessarily just medication, and they don't need the diagnosis for. So the first thing is like self-awareness, like understanding what you struggle with, what your kind of like weaknesses are, and also what you want to be doing. So for example, for me, like I just said earlier, I can't go to the gym, but something that did help me, like I know that my phone is like really bad. So if I put my phone outside the room, then I am much, much, much better. At night, I can sleep a lot better. Like I literally get an alarm clock. It's the best tip I've got for anyone. Get an alarm clock, put your phone outside the room. It is incredibly difficult, incredibly hard. One of the main things we do in coaching. But if you can do that, your quality of sleep will be so much better if you have just an alarm clock. And then like I knew for me, actually just going to the gym in my gym clothes would help me to do it. And then getting on the phone outside the room. So kind of like self-coached because I knew that it was when I was getting changed in the morning that then I'd be like, I can't be bothered to go. It's fine. It's cold. So then like just literally getting up and leaving the house. And so it's kind of like awareness, because everyone is very, very different. Like some people, that's not going to work for everyone. But knowing yourself and what has helped you previously. You can get coaching, like me, ADHD Works. That can be super helpful to have that accountability. But again, it doesn't need to be like an ADHD coach, but just anyone in your life that gets it and can help you to create a routine. Maybe it's like a friend that you meet every day and you talk about what is your number one objective that you're going to do today. Like just people that kind of get you is super useful. Exercise, I was saying it this morning, exercise actually has the same effect on your brain as ADHD medication, but just for a shorter period of time. And obviously the painful part about this is that we need the motivation to go and exercise in the first place. So it's very simple. Obviously, yes, exercise is very helpful, but if you can't force yourself to exercise at all, if you have bought a walking treadmill too and it just has sat against your wall the whole time that you've owned it, like, it's hard. But doing the hardest thing first in the day, and just building a routine and knowing that you don't have to do it perfectly forever, but just try it like one day. I was saying to this personal trainer this morning, I was like, if I just come to the gym and then go home, that would have been a good win for me. Like, we got up, we went outside today. We've got medication. Try to avoid drinking alcohol if you can. It is honestly life-changing. And try not to put yourself in these positions where you are more exposed to things like drugs, because I think addiction is a huge thing that people with ADHD struggle with, and debt as well. But again, like, making those things harder for yourself. So like, I try to have like delivery deleted off my phone because it's just really easy. You'd be very surprised at how many people have coached that we've looked at their bank accounts and they order delivery 3 times a day, saying that I did order McDonald's for breakfast the other day. So I'm not perfect. Yeah, but and that's the thing. You will fall off the wagon and then you just get back on it. And you're like, okay, I'm going to delete it off the barrage.
But what about like specific tools as well? Because I feel like there's a lot out there and everyone bands on about their favourite ones out there, but are there any that you swear by that you think really help?
I know I gave you such boring advice tonight.
No,
but
they're practical advice. I'm just curious about the specific tools.
Because it's real.
Yeah.
Like, that is that I don't really believe in like apps for ADHD because I would just forget about the subscription and then like use it. And so I don't really believe in like specific tools, especially like people always come to coaching and they're like, I just want to learn some tips and tricks. What's the best app for ADHD? And I'm like, I don't know, like
everyone's different.
Whichever one you use the most, like whichever one you're going to actually use. But I think so. I'll think on the top of my head. Body doubling. There's a website called FocusMate, which is really useful. And I think it gives you a few free sessions of body doubling, which is basically you kind of log on to a Zoom, you get matched up with a random person, novelty, and you both say what you're going to do in that time. And then the time goes, but it can be really, really helpful for someone with ADHD to have someone there, like physically, mentally, remotely rather, to get these things done. That's really, really useful. FocusMate. Like an app that I use as a founder is, I don't use it anymore. I now have to use Xero for the accountant, but QuickBooks was a life-changing moment for me when I discovered that. I was like, this is doing all of the tax and the invoice, and personally I love QuickBooks, but our accountants force us to use Xero, which I've just about managed to log into now, like after years. QuickBooks is super helpful for coaching. For coaching, I've got Coach Accountable, which is super useful, very expensive though, but it keeps all of like the notes and things in one place for clients and sessions. ClickUp and Notion. So again, it really depends on the one that you're going to use. Like when I first started out ADHD Works, I got this incredible coach called Leanne Maskell, and I just started working like with ADHD Works. I had a virtual assistant. And it was just chaos. Like that, we talked in like various different formats, like voice notes, texts, phone calls, emails. It was really, really chaotic to like keep track of everything, all the like emails coming in. And Jackie, she showed me her Notion hub, which was like beautiful. like goals and like sprints and what we're focusing on this week and like clients here. And I was like, I would like that. She just showed it to an intro call. I was like, can you make that for me? And she was like, well, I can help you to make it. And I was like, no, I would like your one. How much do I need to pay you for that one? And then she just like basically made me one. But again, she made me one very, very beautiful, but then I didn't actually use it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I say again, a lot as a coach, like it's pointless to buy some fancy tool if you're not going to use it. But this is where the coaching came in super handy, because she then coached me and my virtual assistant to use it. And so we met like every week to make sure we were using it. Me and the virtual assistant met every single morning to make sure that we're putting all of the information into Notion and not like text or email or anything else. And then that became a habit. And then that kind of grew so much that we couldn't really use Notion. And also I made it so messy. I kept making new pages. I was like, oh, new page. But then now we've got ClickUp, which is, again, an incredibly useful tool because people can fill in forms. Again, another like huge bit of advice I'd give to any founder is like qualify your leads and who can talk to you. I know that if I talk to someone that wants a quick chat with me, I'm going to end up running their business for them for free, and not doing any of the things I was meant to do that day. So now anyone that like asks to talk to me basically or work for me, we send them a form which has got various like kind of automated responses on the back end and like sorts them all out. So I think in that way, like ClickUp has honestly changed my life, and having that form, because before I used to allow people to just book into my calendar, and I I talked to you and then I spent the next 3 weeks writing a book I didn't intend to write. Like,
sorry for that.
But no, it was a good bit, and I'm sure one day I'll finish that book and I'll do something with it, or it led to this chat now. But like, you know what I mean? Like, I know that I am so easily distracted that I've built these boundaries around me to stop myself. Oh, Freedom is a great app as well.
Oh, what's that?
It blocks you from social media.
Oh yeah,
like it can block you across like your iPhone and phone and computer from various websites, and it can be like set for timers. It also comes up with this like green screen of 3 seconds whenever I try to go on social media, which is really useful.
Do you really want to do that?
Basically, it's like pause. It's like, it says that, which is super useful because I'll often realize I've just mindlessly kept on.
You're like, actually, I don't need that, and you can. I like that. If it makes you feel better, you say about the Notion or whatever. I now can't use any of those pretty planner apps, which probably have so many journals, but like it's because I used to spend so long beautifying them on my day. Just like I spend more time making them look so pretty and so nice that it become unproductive using them.
And then the dopamine is gone, right?
And it's just like, well, it looks beautiful. Then I'm like, oh, well,
exactly.
Now I've just wasted my first 2 hours of my day, and what do I actually need to do? So I realised actually just writing stuff down physically, and that's not the tool. You're like, I'm curious because I know loads of people ask that. I actually cut down on using tools, and the best thing I use is a pen and paper. I squiggle, and then I have different colour highlighters, and I highlight. And that's the nice, satisfying bit. And I just that's for me. That's what I love doing. But I do like asking about tools because I think people love them, and there's lots of different ones out there. I know lots of people like is it Sidekick, the browser that kind of minimizes distractions and stuff like that. One thing I did quite like is a Brain FM. It's like a radio, and it has like all the nice kind of sounds and just kind of like.
That. Oh, AirPods. AirPods are the most life-changing thing I've ever purchased in my life. And they're the Apple AirPods.
Yeah.
And it's so depressing. I literally lost them the day after I bought them. I left them in the taxi. But then I bought some more, and they are the most life-changing, most beautiful.
But why? Is it because of the
noise reduction?
Yeah, so that's why I've got the big ones of the same thing. So that the AirPods Max, the same. That's what I was saying. So I had the little ones, then I got the big ones because they had a better noise reduction.
Oh, right.
I actually just wear them with no music.
Me too.
I just walk around.
I wear them all the time. They're my favorite things I own. Like they are literally my ultimate like dream. Like because. When I'm at home, if there's like noise outside, I can't take it. And like I will often be found just like going around outside trying to find a quiet spot. Like the library is a great place, actually a good tool library. But there's Apple AirPods, just amazing. And like there's these what they're called like Calm. Calm, is that the name of them? Leap AirPod, like they're kind of like earplugs as well, which are also good. But the first time I bought those, I hoovered them up the next day. The only time I used a hoover, and the second time I wore them at a concert, and they were pretty handy. They're pretty helpful. Yeah, there's all kinds of things, but again, it's like where you just described. It's like finding the thing that works for you because everyone has got such different needs and wants, but there's so much shit out there.
There is, and I feel like there are some people who are trying everything as well, and I feel like some people are on medication, they've got all the tools, they're doing everything, but they still struggle. And I really feel for these people because especially like even financially, like you said, like a lot of people with ADHD are not very good with finances, and they're dealing with money problems. Like how do they actually manage to do all that, even with all that stuff? Also, how do they ask for help without like sounding like a victim? So I think a lot of them worry about that, especially in this day and age now where people are actually using ADHD as an excuse, even if they don't have it. They say they've got it, and they're just as an excuse not to do things. So people are getting a bit pissed off with it because they don't want to believe people with it because they think it's an excuse. So those who actually do have it and are struggling and really want help are too afraid to ask for help because they're scared of looking like a victim. So what What do they do?
Good question. I can answer you with a personal story. The first thing for me to say is that there will never be a point in anybody's life when they don't struggle, ever. Like, especially with ADHD, like, you know, we're going to have some days that are great and we're like, oh, I've got this new business idea and it's so amazing and woohoo, I got a sale, everything's great. And then the next day it's raining and you're like, oh my God, actually, I'm a failure. Or like, then you go, you know, like me, I'm kind of would say I'm quite successful in terms of work now, to the point that people are mean to me on LinkedIn. I don't know, I'm July. But like, God, my blinds, I've not had any curtains for like a year. Well, by the time we finally ordered some blinds, they're the wrong size.
That happened to me.
Really?
Yeah, and I bought the wrong things for the ceiling so they wouldn't hang up.
Oh,
so
really?
I still just got like
Yeah, same. And now still have no blinds. And these just live in my hallway now, these gigantic blinds that shouldn't be there. And like, I also don't have any hot water and like, I don't have a cooker and like, my house is just chaos and I am an ADHD coach and I've written at least 2 books on ADHD. Like, people pay me to coach them. I don't know.
But those who can't teach. That's usually what
also coach.
Yeah, but I guess so. But I feel like you can also know what you're supposed to do, even if you're not so good at doing it yourself. That's also very true. Like, lots of people do.
That's the great thing about ADHD coaching, actually, is like, and that's, I think, why we've been really successful with ADHD Works, is because I'm kind of the face of it. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to sell you some kind of like perfect tool of how to fix yourself, because you're not broken, you're just human. And human, that is the thing of being human, and like life is suffering and like life is fun. And actually that was what came out of me out of like being so suicidal when I was younger. And it was I was like, what should I do with my life? Like, what's the purpose of my life? What is it? And then eventually kind of hit me like, we're all going to die anyway. Like, the only point of it is just to have fun. Like, it's just to enjoy it. And like, there'll be bad times, there'll be good times. But like, why was I so like struggling so much when and wanting to end it all when anyone could die at any point anyway? But saying that, you said about struggling and asking for help without sounding like a victim. Like earlier this year, I talk about like suicide and stuff a lot and like struggles, because obviously like when I was diagnosed, I had all of this happen. And I've always been quite open about it, especially more so in the last couple of years. But like earlier this year, actually when I spoke to you last time, I've never been so suicidal in my life. Like, someone from my company left kind of out of the blue that I've been with for like 2 years, and I was like, my whole life just like fell apart, like, because it was that structure, and I was like, I'm gonna close the company, and I was like, I don't care, I'm gonna do everything. I was just so bad. But what made it so much worse I was like, I literally cannot tell anyone. And that was it. But I've been Seb would go down these like holes and these awful holes of like researching the most like foolproof way to die, and knowing like so much shame, because I was literally wrote an article for Marie Claire about how I got out of feeling suicidal like 6 years ago at the same time, and I was like, I'm such an imposter. Because I was like, for me to now say that, first of all, I was like, what is it to just like write another article, like say it on the podcast? That I was like beating myself up so much about it that I was like, I have no one to talk to, because I was like, it's so embarrassing to feel like this when I'm literally doing this kind of work and I've written this book and all this stuff. Like, I can't just now feel this way. And yeah, it was just like so much shame and silence. And eventually I had a therapist. I was very lucky. So I think having therapy is really, really important. Or having people around you, because I was also really annoyed at like everyone in my life, because I was like, no one helped me. And like when they were like, how are you? I was like, actually, I'm really bad. And then they were like, oh no, sorry. And I was like, and like the person that left, I was like, God, I wrote her a 50-page book. It's the most autistic thing I've ever done. But like, I was like, I can't say this out loud because she's going to feel so awful that she's maybe, and I was like, and I'm being so dramatic in like wanting to close the entire company because she's leaving. And no wonder she's leaving, because obviously who would want to work for someone that's so like dramatic? Yeah, so it was a really, really, really awful time of my life. And I broke up with my boyfriend like spontaneously for no particular reason. And they were all compounded by the medication shortages that we're talking about. So all of these things just kind of spiraled up. And also for me, because the business had been successful, but like I wasn't like inspired anymore, because I wasn't doing new stuff. I was just doing like the same stuff and like feeling like really trapped by that. And then I was really fortunate because I had a therapist. She was like, "Oh, Leanne, you're not okay." And I was like, "No, I'm fine." And I was like, "Actually, I'm fine." She was like, "You should talk to a doctor." And I was like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And she asked me kind of directly, like, "Have you been feeling suicidal?" And then I was like, "Not really, but what would happen if I did tell you that?" And then she was like, "Well, I'm not going to call the police." And she was like, "But basically, we'll do like a risk assessment and stuff, blah, blah, blah." And then I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay then." And then she was like, "Yeah, you should go talk to the doctor." Because she was like, "What you're experiencing is not normal." And I was like, yeah, well, at some point. And then but that conversation opened up enough for me to talk to a friend that I knew had felt similarly. And she was just on holiday. And she didn't respond how I thought she was. She was like really lovely about it, but she was like, "You need to tell your person that I was dating, got back together." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And so it took me a really, really long time, but it was until things were kind of like really falling apart that I then told my boyfriend, and then he helped me to go to the doctor. But he was like, and it's crazy because I'd never told anyone whilst feeling like that I felt like that. It's only ever as I'm now, like retrospectively in the past, but now I'm fine. Blah, blah. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But with that person, I was like, well, we were about to break up again. And I was like, I want to live. I want to have a nice life. And and then I went to the doctor. The doctors are actually great. They put me on sertraline, which is like an antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication. And it has been life-changing. Since then, I have been a completely, completely different person. And it reminds me a lot of taking ADHD medication, actually, maybe even more so. Because I'd had a real thing about anti-anxiety medication. I was like, oh, it doesn't really work for me. I took it once, for 2 days. I was like, no, I'm not taking it. Because they say it can make you worse before it gets better. And I was like, no, but it has been so, so amazing. So the hard answer for you is that asking for help is just really, really, really hard. And it does make you feel like a victim and all of these things, especially for people with ADHD, because we feel like that impacted self-awareness. It's like, oh, I'm just making it up. I'm just lazy. We've already got this narrative in our head of beating yourself up, gaslighting yourself for your struggles. And then especially that gaslighting is compounded by the fact we can wake up and feel like, actually, I'm fine. Our coach told me the other day that was not in a good place. And they were like, I'm fine. They're like, I've been having these panic attacks, dissociating, but they're like, but I'm ready to be productive now. And I'm like, no, you're not. No. Off you go to the doctor. But it's a really, really difficult thing. So I think it's recognizing that you deserve support in the first place, and that it's worth that it is possible to feel differently than how you feel. And then slowing down bit by bit. Yesterday I was feeling so burnt out and awful. And then today I woke up and I went outside and I went to meet this personal trainer. And then I was like, I had a shower. So I'm like, I feel so much better. I was like, wow, that's that's really good actually. So I think it's that self-acceptance, asking for help. It's really hard to ask for help when you don't know what help you need, but remembering you don't need to know what help you need. And we've talked a lot about assessments and how they might not there might not be any point in there. But to be honest with you, that's why I sought the autism assessment. That was a huge part of it, because feeling like that made me realize oh, it's not normal. And if the ADHD assessment has helped me this much, the whole journey of ADHD, because it wasn't just that diagnosis that helped me, but it was all of the things that came after that, the writing the book, the understanding myself, going on this path of journey. But I thought it would be similar for autism. And I was like, I at least owe that to myself, because obviously I'm still not 100%. So I think there's accepting no one is ever going to be perfect. Life's not ever going to be beautiful, but also you don't need to struggle so much to that point where and it's not normal to feel suicidal, even though it might feel normal because that's what you've always experienced. But it's not there is another kind of life out there where you don't struggle so severely. And most people do not struggle that much. And there's no shame in it either. You're just living in a world that is not designed for you, especially if you're a founder. Being a founder is so fucking hard, whether you have ADHD or not. But then if you've got ADHD, we can be great and amazing at some things, and then things like tax or money or charging money, really, really hard. And that leads so many founders to give up and to be oh, I'm bad, I failed, all this stuff. But actually it's just because no one ever taught you how to charge for, or that you deserve money for what you do. I mean, a long answer.
No, I mean, it's there's a lot of good stuff there. I feel it's interesting. And I was thinking about something I read the other day, because I read that people with ADHD are also more likely to suffer from burnout because obviously of how the brain works, and you just you're overdoing it, and also they're less likely to realize they have burnout because of everything, and so that becomes really difficult. And then they get really sick really quickly and easily and frequently. Like, how would you, like, what advice would you offer for those who are like, maybe
like me?
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, you've been dealing with burnout now. Like, how do you avoid it?
It's so tricky. It's just that it's almost that constant checking in with yourself. Actually, a app really helped me when I was going through that really bad time, which is called Dailyo, and it's like a mood diary. And it was really ADHD friendly. Sorry, talking about tools. Because it just took me like a minute to put a face in, like happy, sad, whatever. And you can also put like what has related to that day. So it's like data, dopamine. And then I realized like every single face was like sad. And I was like, oh, maybe that's not normal. Maybe it's not normal to be like sad every day. Like every day was like an angry red face. And I was like, yeah. And that's what kind of also, it almost was like giving me that proof of like, hey, you're not okay. Like, because we can kind of convince ourselves otherwise. So that was really, really helpful. Like keeping a diary, something like that is really useful. And then I think it's trying to have a routine. So for example, I know for myself, if I am ordering McDonald's for breakfast and there's no food in my fridge, someone said to me, I said, just have lunch. And I was like, I don't have any food in my fridge. Like none. No. I'd had ice cream for breakfast and she was like, and I was like, oh, this is not good. Like, I know, and we all know these things, but it's that we just ignore them. And then I was like, and I don't have sleep. And like, I'd started sleeping with my phone in my room again because I got out of the routine. And like, I would spend half an hour in the morning, like scrolling on social media. And so I think we can all feel it coming. It's knowing, what you've got a chapter about burnout and ADHD and A to Z, and like a burnout buddy who can help you realize like those symptoms. Like if you've got a friend that is similar to you, where you can be like, hey, and like for me, for example, I know what my signs of burnout are, which usually involve hating everyone, and also booking myself in with everyone. It's like saying yes to everything because I'm like, I'll just figure it out later, and then realizing like it's Friday night and I've got plans of 4 people and all I want to do is go home and cry in my empty house with no food in there that is surrounded by mess. So then. And the unfortunate thing is, I think, like, burnout is kind of like this constant. There are many, many people are diagnosed with ADHD after a burnout because they don't realize that their mode of operating is not sustainable on their own. And the more that you take on, the more pressure that you're actually putting on yourself. So that's what happened to me this week is, like, I took on so much stuff because I was like, I'll just do this new course and I'll do it in a month and I'm fine, I'm just gonna make it all. And then I also like got like 3 articles to write and like all these employees and like I'm like, actually this is not sustainable. But I think it's when you realize that, like that's why like last night was like kind of my bad point, but then today is better, thankfully for you. But this will be a very different podcast. But then trying to get yourself out of it as soon as possible and do one thing that will help you. So I know for me, like exercise, like going to yoga, having a routine is so important. And I know that it's not ever going to stay permanently. But like going to that personal trainer was super, super helpful today. Because I was like, oh, this is a new thing that can help me like just get back into doing one small thing. And then that's helped me throughout the rest of the day to like buy lunch and like eat lunch. And so it's just not beating yourself up and trying to spot it and take some action. Like today, I went for my calendar for next week and I was like, what can I cancel? And so it's not like that magical, like, which is very ADHD, like all or nothing. Like, it's not like, oh, I must go on a retreat. And then going on the retreat and just working the whole time, like being on your phone the whole time. Like, what's the point? Or like also going on holiday. I find going on holiday really tough because I'm like, it's like spinning 50 plates, and then you know that if you stop spinning them, they're all just going to crash to the ground, and you're just going to have to pick them back up again, and it's going to be even harder. So trying to put down just one plate where you can, just so you've got 49 plates, and then you're like, oh, actually, the world didn't end when I quit my volunteer job that's taking up all of my time. Maybe I'm going to quit my second volunteer job that's taking all my time up. It's like little steps, and trying to be nice to yourself and trying to ask for help as well. Like my friend yesterday, I tried to I was like, oh, can we meet at 5? Because I was like, I'm actually having a really bad day. And then she was like, yeah, sure, I can't wait to see you. And I was like, don't want him to see you. And then she was like, should we go for a walk? And I was like, I don't want to go for a walk. But like, it was actually so helpful to be forced to go for a walk. So having friends and like, they won't give up on you when you're like, oh, I can't make it, sorry. And they're not going to be like, okay, let's see you next time. But the ones that are going to be like, all right, I'll see you then. And like not let you back out of stuff to just like workaholic yourself to death are really important.
You just mentioned the importance of having good friends in your life. And I really want to talk to you about friendships, relationships, and what that's like when you have ADHD. Because I think that a lot of people are misunderstood. Again, like there's a lot of stuff out there now where people are saying they've got ADHD and they're using it as excuses, obviously pushing people away. But I think I also know that those with ADHD often find it difficult to maintain relationships. They do get overly sensitive, they push people away, they self-sabotage, and it causes problems. I think there's a common thing where lots of them don't have lots of relationships as well. They have a few. And I know there's a lot of people who, I guess, feel bad about themselves. They start to feel like there's something wrong with them because they're damaging relationships and everything. Like, talk me through that sort of stuff. And I'm sure you've had to know a lot of people who've done the same thing. And because I feel like there's a lot of people out there who would resonate with this.
Yeah, that's why I ran these ADHD retreats. And it was the nicest thing. The last one I did, everyone there were like, all my life I've always felt like on the fringe of groups. And like, I'm not really in a group. But here I feel like normal and like accepted, which is really nice. It was a relief for me because I felt on the fringe because I was running the retreat and I was like, same here, but I'm also facilitating. No, it was lovely. And I think that when you do think differently to like most people, it's really, really lonely. I think that's probably the how I would summarize having ADHD is lonely because it's all happening inside your head and on the outside you look normal and you may even be like high achieving, and so people don't assume that you can't like feed yourself or shower without extreme difficulty. And I think friendships wise, like, so there is a study that says people with ADHD, children, that they receive 20,000 more negative comments than their peers by the age of 12. And so many people with ADHD that I know have been bullied. Yeah, me too. And so when you grow up feeling like the odd one out, then it makes you have a really hectic kind of relationships, and you're very, very vulnerable, at least in my experience, like extremely vulnerable. And I would say that is very much so from like both the ADHD and the autism. But I never really thought I could like pick friends. I just was like, okay, how do I find the other person that's like alone and being bullied? And so I just will have like one person to hang out with. And I also think this is something where like when I had a kind of friends at school and university, the most toxic kind of like bullying-ish people would be the ones that I was like closest to, because they were the ones that got my attention the most, the ones that were like all right and like kind of nice to me were the ones that weren't like kind of harassing me all the time and being like, do this thing, do that thing, or like asking me for stuff. And so I would never think to like reach out to them and also again, because I was so kind of hectic all the time in my head, like I was just found it really hard to even be around people without masking and having to think about like what to say and how to act, and like constantly like helping people and feeling like there was a real transactional nature to all relationships, which very much came from this rejection sensitive dysphoria. And also probably for me was compounded by the fact that I've been like a model since the age of 13. So I was always so guilty for like existing and making people feel bad because I was a model, even though I didn't want to be a model. I didn't think that like anything got of it. And then that has carried on definitely throughout my life. And then I think friendships, like, it's just things like, well, I don't know how, there are no rules of friendship. No one tells you like how often you're meant to meet up or how often you're meant to talk. We're all living in this world where we're like, we get a million messages every day from random people. We've not like I replied to your message today and I realized I'd not listened to your voice note from like 6 months ago. Sorry, because I just can't listen to voice notes. If someone sends me a voice note, I'm like, I will listen to that later, and then it's like gone out of my brain. Thanks for not feeding me. But like,
so I didn't even know it was you really texting, so I never saved numbers.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I do remember you messaged me once. But yeah, like that's exactly what I mean. Like birthdays, oh god, I always forget everyone's birthday because I have Facebook. That I'll try like one person their birthday last year. I was like, cannot forget my birthday again this year. Like had it in my diary and still forgotten. I was like, oh my god. And it's one of these like weird birthdays. Why do we even celebrate? But I hate my birthday so much. Birthdays, another terrible time for me as a child and as an adult. I'm just like, there's few times I've kind of organized things, then I spend the entire time stressing out over other people and are they okay? And there's this person friends of that person, there's that, like so stressful. I take great pleasure in doing nothing. And then like dating and relationships is a whole other like horrific experience. And for me, like I'm literally in my first relationship ever now where I've not just moved in with them very quickly. From which I've now realized is so strongly related to that autism because that's how my life is really, I've really, really struggled if I spend like a night with someone to then get back into my routine and to like go home and get back into like the headset and like cook and like survive. So I would usually move in with people really quickly and that led to like a lot of really, really bad situations that I was really lucky to get out of. So yeah, being impulsive and having this kind of like different, very literal way of thinking where if someone comes up to you and they say they want to hang out with you or be friends or they are I incapable of saying no. Incapable. Someone asked me to do something yesterday and I really did not want to do it and I was like, how do I say no to that? I was like, I can't say no. And my boyfriend was just like, just say no. He was like, you can just say no. And I was like,
it's really rude. I find it
I find it really rude. I was like, what am I saying? No, I don't like you. Like, yeah. And often if someone asks, like, people will very, very commonly message me and say like, hi, my friend's going through a bad time with ADHD. Can you have a chat with them? And then I'll just ignore that message because I'm like,
you can't say no.
I don't know what to say. I'm like, no, charge people for that. Like, I don't have any time for myself. Like, so I just will ignore them, which is probably not great either. And then I just kind of accept that people don't like me and I'm all right with that.
It's so tough though, because I feel like as a founder as well, like, you're supposed to build relationships. I mean, I'm literally running a members club and the whole point of it is I'm going to build more meaningful relationships. And I know that it's hard because people with ADHD struggle with this already. But it's also, as a founder, you need to hire people. If you want to grow your business, you need to hire people. And then it's like, how do you hire people? Like, and what, like you just said earlier, you say like, you know, why would we want to work with you if I'm kind of like kooky? And then that like, you know, they have to understand you as a person. And it's like, also you have all these requirements of ways that you work and they're going to interpret it a different way, or you're just going to be in your own head thinking of these things. And it's really difficult. I know that people struggle to hire those with ADHD. And again, like, you've been through that, but is there any words of wisdom that you could offer for those?
That's why I'm trying to make this course, this neuroaffirmative course, because I was like, then like lawyers, accountants, like all these different kinds of people that I'm going to work with can do it and understand me. Like our accountant, like I recently had a huge freak out at them because I was like, they didn't reply and I was like, you've not submitted a pay slip, like, oh, and like freaked out. I was like, this person can't eat now because of you. And then when they replied on the Monday, they were like, your payday is the last day of the month, not the last Friday. I was like, oh, okay, thank you. Sorry about that. I forgot about that. Like, just start like, yeah, like, or I'll get really, really anxious about doing things wrong or like not reply to things. But I was like, if I do this course, it will hopefully help people to be like, kind of have these conversations up front to recognize like, oh, that person thinks differently to me, or like you know, to give a bit of extra context and realize like for me to not feel like, oh, they're judging me on top of that and they don't like me and I'm causing them all these problems, but to be able to give that like a little bit of reassurance, or like, and because similarly with all people, like I experienced it running this company, like the amount of people that have messaged me being like, I've got rejection sensitive dysphoria and you sending a template response has triggered me, and I'm like, all right, I'll add that to my list of things. Like, someone emailed me the other day and they said, you obviously don't care about people with ADHD. And I was like,
even though that's literally your entire life.
I called them up. I was like, hello. I'm like, they sent it to like the hello inbox, and like they're like, Leanne Maskell doesn't care about people with ADHD if she's not doing this whatever thing they wanted. And I was like, hi, it's me, Leanne from ADHD Works. And I was like, I'm just wondering what I can do for you. And I was like, because I've been working since 6 o'clock in the morning. And they were like, I'm sorry. Should be. So yeah, I would say it's hard. And I actually had a meeting with my new employee this morning, and I was saying to her, like, I am a really hard person to work with, especially as a manager. And it does make me really, really self-conscious because that all or nothing approach doesn't translate that well to the workplace. And you have to, and luckily it's so amazing. We had such a great conversation because she is also ADHD and autistic. So we were able to just have this really honest, open conversation where like neither of us were taking what we were saying badly, and able to reassure each other and able to be like, there is no like magic tool that's going to be like, off we go, yay. But it's just figuring that out together. And most people wouldn't have those conversations. I think most people don't really like their colleagues, or all of them. But like, if you can have colleagues where you can have that level of self-awareness and vulnerability to be able to meet them in the middle is a really, really amazing thing, which is why I think a lot of people that work at ADHD Works like it, I hope. But saying that, I'm also sure that a lot of people that have worked there don't particularly like me anymore. Because for whatever reason, like because I over people pleased from the beginning, then I changed my mind a lot. And I was like, we're going to have team meetings every week. And then the next week I was like, actually, I realized it's a bad idea. Or like, I think we've got like 6 WhatsApp groups right now. And I'm like, actually, we're not doing that anymore. And so it's really hard, and really, really hard with people pleasing as well. Like in the beginning, I was like, I really want to pay everyone like super, super well. Like, and I just assume like, oh, if I'm really nice to people, they'll be nice to me. And they're not.
Yeah.
They're not. They're like, give me more money. And you're like, but I'm already giving you more money than I'm getting. And they're like, no, I would like more. And you're like, all right, then this doesn't actually work. And so it's a long journey, but I think that finding people like you, that self-awareness coaching is like so, so helpful for this stuff. Having, like I mentioned earlier, the coach that helped me with me and my virtual assistant to like get those, like having a third party there to help bridge that gap is really, really important. I think taking it slowly as well, and not being afraid to go backwards. Like earlier, probably at the start of the year, we started with like 20 coaches or so, and like a team of like 8 people. And then in March, when this employee left, I fired like 20 people, or ended the contract with like 20 people. And now we've got a team of like 5, which is so nice. I'm very sorry to all the people that are fired. But I was literally about to kill myself. So like, then there'll be no company. But I was like, at that point, I just felt like I'd grown this gigantic people-pleasing machine where everyone was like happy and taking, and also didn't like me for whatever reason because I wasn't doing enough. And except me, like, and I was like, how have I got into this position? So when this person said I'm leaving, I was like, I'm not happy, Riley too. and everyone else was like, no, don't quit. And I was like, and then I was like, fine, I'll get a business manager. But then I was like, oh my God, if I get a business manager, I'm just going to have to manage them. And I think trust is a really, really big thing for people with ADHD because we struggle to trust ourselves. Yeah. So it's really hard to trust someone else. But I think the other answer I have is really to like, try your best to be aware of your own challenges, but not beat yourself up for it or like victimize yourself and be like me. We're like, no one could ever work with me because I'm just I'm unlovable and like I just deserve to be in a cage by myself. Like no one is perfect, and like being aware of your own strengths and weaknesses and like boundaries and what you need to have in place will help you to navigate that with other people. Because I think those boundaries are like the invisible lines of where me and you end as like people and like what we need, and learning how to communicate that to someone, even through the discount, like the no, how we're both like, I don't know how to say no. It's rude, but like learning that no is not a bad word, and to say like, hello, actually, when you did this thing, actually maybe it wasn't that good. But that's why with my new employee who is ADHD and autistic as well, when we met, we like clicked, and that's why I know that I can say anything to her like that because she thinks exactly the same way as me. Yeah. So I think it's just finding the right people, not the first people. It's probably a really good piece of advice. Not getting employed, not building your business like you think you should, and not being afraid to go backwards. Because I was really, really fortunate that like I went backwards instead of just getting a business manager. At the time, I had various like mentor type people, and they were like, you should just hire a business manager, and they were like, they can take you from this figure to that figure in 5 years and grow a business by this much. And they like introduced to a recruitment company that told me they were going to charge me £30,000 to find. And I was like, never mind, I give up. Like, it's all right. I'll just fire everyone. Actually, it's all good. And which was against all of the advice from everyone I was talking to. They were like, you just need a manager. And I was like, but I didn't want to give my company. So I was like, what am I going to do? I have a life outside of this. So I'm really glad that I listened to myself and like just downsized. And we do exactly the same amount of work anyway with just less people. Whereas like someone I know started a company and they just hired loads and loads of people because they got funding.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's what you should do. And then they came to me for coaching. They were like, oh, I'm a bad manager. I was like, no, you just don't need all these people. Like, they don't have anything to do.
Yeah.
And so they're bored and they're not doing anything.
They don't have the processes in place and everything. So I think it's a classic of entrepreneurship. And obviously that's what lots of I cover. And it's that people just, they rush and they sort of like grow. And they don't actually think about the structures. And actually we downsized and we were so much happier. And I think that's what it is. It's just, sometimes it's just better, like understanding who you are. Like I said, I think after all this, like there's so much you've covered today. I feel like it's been incredible. And but yeah, I think all comes down to that self-awareness thing, right? And I think if you understand who you are, what your needs are, what you really want, what you really believe in, and you know what you need, and actually you won't always know the answer, but actually having the patience to learn the answers, I think then it'll be okay. That's what.
Yeah, I think self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Because there's that awareness about, like, before I would just spend so much time beating myself up, and now I'm like, it's all right that you ordered McDonald's for breakfast. Tomorrow we're gonna not do that, and then you don't waste all of that time going in circles against yourself. But then you're just like, all right, I know that this thing has happened, or like whatever, we've made this mistake, but it doesn't mean the world is over. Like we'll start again tomorrow, or like, okay, yeah, maybe this isn't great right now. They've had all these people, but like, maybe you can end their contracts, like, otherwise you're going to die and collapse. So like, right, we just have to get through it. And like, that's the thing, it's kind of the thing what you can control. Like, and although it might feel difficult to control yourself, especially if you have ADHD, like there are things that you can control. Yeah. Like you can always say no, and you can always delete stuff out your calendar, which is good. Yeah. You can take a sick day. It's a great, a great feeling.
I think it's good. It's amazing. I think there's been so much here, and so thank you so much. And I'm going to pop all your social handles and all the things that you've said as well. Like you've made loads of recommendations, like your courses. It's going to be like the biggest set of show notes ever, but it's going to be incredible. So thank you for everything, and I hope that everyone's enjoyed today's episode.
Hope so.
Yay.